Hi, and welcome to the first lesson in the Inner Kingdom and the Queendom Transformation Program. I'm so honored that we're here together doing this journey for you, and I'm mostly so excited for you because you've been curious enough, been hungry enough to want to explore your inner world, and understand how the inner parts of you, the more invisible parts of you, are influencing and affecting the results, the experiences that you're having in your outer world. And so in this lesson, we're going to take a deeper look into who you are at your core, okay, and understand what's been happening in there. And also we're going to have a look at, what makes you who you are. And then we're going to do a bit of self-reflection and look into how you can sort of transform yourself on a deeper level. And I'll explain what I mean by this. Here's what we're going to be covering in this lesson. We're going to cover how to build a sense of deep core confidence. Now, what do I mean by that? Now, there are modules, there are methods, and there are tips and tricks and how we can change our state at any given moment. For example, if you want more presence in your life, you just drop down, cross your legs, put your two fingers together, place them on your legs and start to meditate, right? We can drop into, this deep meditation, and we can create more presence and calmness in our lives, and that can really help us focus. But it is temporary, okay? We do need, this is a practice that we need to maintain consistently. Now, this does affect our state. However, there are a lot of methods out there that can help us alter our state, alter how we feel, right, when we need to. But the difference is that they're not always long lasting. And so the work that you have, decided to lean in, get curious about, is work that is truly transformational because it occurs on the deepest levels. It occurs at the roots of who you are. And so we're going to look at, in this lesson, how to build that deep core confidence and what it's made up of. We're also going to look at where this all began, where this journey of you began to started to, take shape. And we're going to look at what we now need to solve to take back our kingdom, our queendom. We're going to look at our roles, what they are, how they came about, and how to resign from our current roles, right? And we're also going to look and do some self-reflection and some self-ceremonies to help set up for the integration session that we will do once you've completed everything that's required in this pre-learning. Now, this pre-learning is designed to massage and to warm up and stretch your subconscious mind, ready for the work that's ahead. So it's very important that you take the time to associate into the work that's here in this pre-learning. And then once you feel in your inner world that, the work that has been presented here has been completed to a level that you truly feel is ready to be taken to the next level through the integration session, then you'll book in for that. So for now, let's just concentrate on what is going to be required for you to successfully successfully complete this pre-learning on the deepest level you can. And to do that, we're going to first look at having a look at the why. Why would we even do this work? So look, the problem with not doing this level of work around our roles and who we are and our identity is that if we don't, then we can be living behind a mask and continue to live behind a mask, which is a version of ourselves that is false, a version of ourselves that we have essentially painted and created to be accepted in the world. And a lot of I'm going to say everybody lives behind this mask until we have done some form of this inner transformational work where we can, where we no longer have to keep the mask at arm's length and ready to put on when we need to protect ourselves, or when we need to, shield ourselves. But we can begin to live without it. And so this is the importance of this work. The other reason why it's important is because if we don't, then we go through life and experience trouble having, experiencing or expressing our emotions. So we essentially, we have trouble accessing and expressing and leaning into all emotions. So there are no good or bad emotions. There simply are a very extensive list of different emotions with different flavors. And if we don't look at the roles that we're playing and what is behind all of that, then we do have trouble expressing emotions. And emotional intimacy is something that really brings us back to our core self. It really allows us to experience our life fully when we can fully experience emotions, because emotions, when they're unexpressed, then they remain inside of us. They remain unexpressed. They remain just sort of trapped in our physical body and in our being, and that has all sorts of effects on us. So we have trouble expressing emotions when we don't do this level of transformational work. The other one here is that we feel held back in the things that we do, specifically like in our business. And you're here because you are looking to build something from the ground up, do something out of the ordinary, and build a future or a legacy for yourself, for your family. And doing something like this requires taking risks, requires taking leaps, and requires action. And sometimes when we've got roles in place and these roles have a certain way of doing things, when we go to do something that's out of the ordinary for that role, and that role is embedded in our identity, then when we go to do it, we feel like we can't, and we're held back. Something's holding us back. Something heavy there holding us back, even though we've read books, or we've talked with a mentor, or we've talked with other people who have done this experience and have suggested to do this certain activity, to take this certain leap. But yet when we go to do it, it feels like we can't. We feel stuck. And so this is why it's so important that we do this work, because if we don't, we will continually feel held back and like we're not moving. So the promise of doing this work is that if we do, we begin to know our worth. We can see our worth. We can see what's inside of ourselves. We can see how bright our light is within, and we have proof of that because we've journeyed through it. We've explored it. We've understood it. And this is the beauty of understanding our inner worth, is that we can go on to, understanding what we're truly capable of, which is an awesome thing to know and to operate from. The other thing is that once we have seen what's inside, is that we begin to fall deeper in love with what we see and feel within ourselves. We can look in the mirror and we can accept ourselves wholly and fully. We're going to have our days because we're human, but all in all, we can, we've done a bulk after doing this transformational work. We've done the foundational, we've done the heavy lifting, and now it's just about maintenance. And we can look in the mirror, we can, embrace ourselves at every step of the way and every new challenge, and we can accept what we see and what we feel. And what that means is that we are able to move forward easily. The other thing is that we're able to express all of ourselves. We can express ourselves fully without the worry of judgment from the outside. So we're putting all of our energy into expressing who we need to be, who we want to be, what we want to feel, without one eye on what's happening outside of ourselves and what might be said and what might be cast our way if we do things a certain way, because we don't worry about that anymore. What we're wanting to do and what we're inspired to do is express ourselves fully. So that is the promise of doing this level of transformational work, is that we're able to express ourselves in all ways, shapes or forms, and we're doing it because we're inspired to. So here's the thing. With this work, I'm going to begin with showing you a very logical way in which to comprehend how our inner world is made up, okay? And then we're going to look at some activities and how to self-reflect and really prepare for the integration that is going to occur when we get together and do your one-on-one integration. So the first thing I want to speak to you about is just reminding you, and I say reminding you because the knowledge is there within you. There is a reason why you are on this call today, or you're watching this lesson today, is because there's been a part of you that has been whispering, that has been knowing all of the stuff that's inside of this inner triangle right here, right? There's been a part of you that has been pulling, whispering, and knowing that there's more than what's being played out so far in your life experience. So at the core of us, what makes us, whole and complete is the knowing that we are lovable, worthy, and good enough. And you know that at a core level. We all know that at a core level. Consciously, though, after doing life for so many years, we have forgotten, right? We do forget this knowing at times. And so the most important work is transforming our inner world to a level where we are reminded of this, and where we do have the proof of this, and we operate from today, or from after doing this work, we operate in a manner in which we understand that we are worthy, we are lovable, and we are good enough. So this is the journey back to who we truly are. I call this work, in a nutshell, just remembering who we are at a core level. That's how I would say it in one line. Now, how we do that is doing exercises and integrations of our identity, yes, and everything that makes up our mindset. But the main ones are to create this core confidence, or this self-esteem within us, to really truly reclaim our knowing of that we are worthy, we are lovable, and we're good enough, is to practice expressing our emotions. Okay, this is what we're going to be doing. We're going to learn how to express our emotions, because along the way there were emotions that weren't accepted in our family units or in our tribes. And so if we're not expressing the full spectrum of emotions, then we're not expressing our full self. So the work that we're going to be doing here is about creating an identity that does allow for the full spectrum of emotions to be experienced. The other one is to be able to communicate your needs, the needs that you innately need to experience in your life, and not experience, and be able to communicate that as well. It's also about being able to communicate your boundaries, right? The invisible force fields around you that keep your inner garden or your inner world intact, and all of the flowers in your garden make up your truth and your beauty, right? And not everybody is meant to come into your garden, okay, and experience that truth and that beauty and hear that, right? But it absolutely is made for some people to come in, and it's about you knowing, right, when someone is crossing a boundary that they haven't been invited into, right? They haven't been invited into your world yet. They're coming in. It's about you expressing, hey, that's not appropriate. Okay, and so often when we've grown up, there have been violations of our boundaries being crossed many a time. And so this work is about putting back in place our ability to communicate our boundaries, right? Let people in and let people know when they're coming in unannounced or uninvited, right? So it's about communicating and expressing all of these different components, the emotions that we have, the needs and the boundaries that we have. So once all these three are intact, all of these three things, emotions, needs, and boundaries, once they're all intact and being expressed and communicated in a resourceful, healthy way, this is where our inner self-esteem, or our core confidence, begins to strengthen. Okay, and this is where we really believe and begin to remind ourselves and feel that we are worthy, lovable, and good enough. So that is how we create that deep core confidence. Now, let me give it to you this way. I want to talk to you about where this all began, where your journey began, and where you've ended up so far. So, where it began was you came in as an infant, a beautiful, pure child, full of love, full of joy, full of, wonder, right? And you were ready for anything, like we all were when we came in. It's like when you look at a baby, doesn't matter if you know the baby or it's your neighbor's baby or it's a stranger in the street and you walk past and you look into that pram and the baby smiles and you just light up. It's like you just cannot help but just smile and feel a deep sense of love when you look at a baby or a child. And this is who we were when we came in. This is who you were. There was no obstacle too great. There was nothing that scared you as such, right? You were optimistic. Everything was love and joy. So I trust that makes sense. Now, look, along the way, right? Along the way, as we're growing up in our family units and our tribes with our parents, our caregivers, grandparents, our magical bigger people, bigger than us, people that we looked up to and learned from, we started to learn. We started to learn what was on. We started to learn what was not on. Okay, and so as we're growing up in our tribes, these magical big people, and they were magical because, like, you'd turn around and there'd be food on the table, or they'd just have a way of making you feel warmth, and like they would take care of you. If you needed something, it would be there. Yeah, and in most cases. And so we looked at our caregivers or the significant adults in our lives as magical big people. And what we wanted to do as children is we wanted to make sure that we were doing right by them, that we were fitting in, and that we were coming into this life experience, and we made sure that we took care of them because they were taking care of us. And so what happened is that our magical big people, when we were growing up, they had a list of approved emotions, needs, and boundaries. Approved as in they accepted of them. They were the emotions that they felt comfortable expressing, and there were some that they weren't. There were needs that they were comfortable communicating, and then there were some that they weren't, and likewise for boundaries. And so what we were doing as we're growing up and learning is we were learning what was accepted and what wasn't. And so when we did something that wasn't accepted, we knew about that. Either it was communicated to us verbally, or maybe it was sensed through energetically, right? And when we felt that it wasn't on, then we shut it down. And we labeled it as a part of ourselves that we shouldn't do. And it was like a layer of clay or crud that we shouldn't do. And instead, the things that we learned were okay and were accepted, we did more of, right? To take care of our family unit, our tribe, because after all, these things that were accepted were a part of the list of accepted needs, emotions, and boundaries that our magical big people like to see, like to experience, like to do. And we wanted to make sure we did the same as well, to make sure that everything in our tribe stayed intact. Okay. And so what we ended up with is a whole bunch of layers of crud that we knew weren't accepted. So we didn't do them. And then what we layered over top of all of that was an acceptable version of ourselves that were made up of all the acceptable needs, emotions, and boundaries that our magical big people did approve of. And so what happened is that we've got this crust around all the stuff that we didn't want to show. We've got this crust that was made up of acceptable stuff that we now show to the world as who we are. Now, that version of ourselves is different for every single person, and the only thing that matters is what's going on for you. And this is what we're going to look at in this lesson, okay, is understanding who you are, who you have become, and who and what is also underneath that on so many levels. That's what we're going to look at unpacking. So I trust that makes sense. Now, a couple of things before I go on to the next slides is that, one, it's really important to suspend all judgment about anybody else or yourself for that matter, okay? Understanding that some of the things that you uncover or that come up for you regarding other people or your magical big people is that bringing compassion is so important, because they too had their core, their clay, and their crust going on. They had their own magical big people and their own family units and own tribes, and they had their own associations with what was on and what wasn't on. And so while there may be some things that come up for you, I really do ask you to bring compassion and just suspend any judgment about, right or wrong doing, right? Because at the end of the day, everybody involved in this journey that you're about to go on, everybody that has influenced you, affected you in some way, they've all been a victim or a part of another tribal cycle with their own magical big people influencing, the decisions and the choices that they've made later on. And so bringing compassion and understanding this point that I'm making is really going to help you look at it from a perspective of you're here to heal and to, explore your inner world, and whilst bringing compassion to what may have been going on, what may have been influencing and going on for, the people in your tribe and in your tribal cycle. So that's one thing to take into consideration. And the other one is that there is such a beautiful gift in this work. And that gift is, now that you're here doing this work and understanding how these tribal cycles are kept in place, if you're now here exploring your roles and what was, accepted and what wasn't accepted, and you're able to, now do this work, make choices, and reclaim the parts of you that haven't seen the light of day in a little while, then what you're doing is you're making a choice, and that choice is going to, inspire who you're about to become as a result of reclaiming these parts of yourself. That's going to then inspire your future generations, okay? Because and this knowledge that you're obtaining here about your inner kingdom is going to inspire, your future generations, and it's able to end the tribal cycle of just doing as we've always done and sort of just like having it perpetuate generation after generation. It can stop here with you, which is the beauty of it. So, and then the last thing I want to remind you of is that anything that comes up for you, or you see as a part of us doing this work together, like going through and having a look at what is underneath the crust. The one thing that I would say to you is that to really bring in compassion for yourself and suspend the judgment, because as you go through and do this work, there are current roles that are in place, and so the judgment that would be coming up, if any, would be from the position of your current roles. And so it's really important to bring compassion in these moments, because one, you're doing the best that you absolutely could have with the knowledge that you've had, right? So yes, now you're here obtaining new knowledge and expanding out what you do know. However, before this point, you may not have known. And so it's really important to bring compassion to that you were just doing the best that you knew how, okay? And you should be really proud of yourself for being where you are today, and also while being really excited and eager for where you're about to go with these parts of you that potentially haven't seen the light of day and have been missing from your experience. So there's just a couple of things I wanted to bring in before we move on. So the first activity that we're going to go through is we're going to start to resign from the current role and take back the ownership of your inner castle, your inner kingdom, inner queendom. So on the screen here, you'll see 3 circles. Now, the 2 outer circles, these are concerning your magical big people in your life. So the significant adults, the adults that influenced you the most, okay, who had the greatest significance on you. So it will be different for each person. Maybe it's parents, maybe it's grandparents, maybe it's caregivers or older siblings. Okay, who influenced you the most? That's what I want you to have a think about. It's usually 2, and if there was only 1, then it's only 1. Whatever's right for you. There's no right or wrong. I just really ask that you associate into this work and into these feelings that come up for you. And I want you to go ahead and answer the following questions for both magical big people that come to mind. Think about, who did you need to be in order to receive their love? All of the things that were accepted. And what we're doing here is we're having a look at how your crust is made up at the moment. What did you love about them? What are the things you admired about them when you watched or when you listened? Because it was like monkey see, monkey do. If you saw that they were enjoying something, you would tend to do that same thing as well. What did they love about you also? What did they praise you for? What did you get a pat on the shoulder for? What did you get a kiss on the forehead for? Yeah, what did you get a thumbs up for? All of that stuff makes up the crust version that is now being presented to the world. And so I want you to do that for both people. And just have a look at all the stuff that was accepted, because this is now a part of your crust. Now, I want you, once you've filled out both sides of those circles, is to associate into the feeling of all those things you have listed there, all the things you had to do, all the things that you had to say. And I want you to give it a name. I want you to name what that being would be called if it had a name, right? And the name is whatever comes up for you. I've had some clients call theirs Hearty, right? Like, they always had to, defend and, be strong. Okay. So what's another one I've had? Like the Joker, right? Always had to fit in and be funny, right? And not take things too seriously. So that was another client. Whatever the name is for you is what it is. I just want you to go ahead and look at everything that you had to be, everything that you had to say, and give it a name, okay? And this is the role that you've been playing as a part of your crust. Now, once you've done that, I want you to have a look at these inner parts of you that potentially haven't seen the light of day, but they absolutely do matter. And I want you to list down all of these things that were not okay about you, the parts that weren't accepted and that were potentially rejected. And look, these things they were either said directly out loud that they weren't okay, or maybe they were implied energetically. Again, there is no right or wrong. It's whatever it felt like it was for you at the time. And I want you to list these parts down that were suppressed. Okay, so to give you an example, maybe there was a part of you when you were younger that, tried to communicate a need and it wasn't allowed, or it was shut down, or maybe you were told to be quiet or something like that. Whatever you can remember, the parts that weren't okay or felt like they weren't okay or literally weren't okay to do, write them down. And these are the things that have been missing from your experience because they've been underneath the crust. They haven't been expressed or shown to the world. Now, what I want you to think about once you have the list written out is I want you to have a look at everything that's in your crust and everything that's in this middle part as well. And I want you to associate into the feeling of what it would be like if these missing parts of you that haven't seen the light of day for some time now, what life would be like, what that would feel like if you were living with these parts as well, with these parts of you that have been missing, what would that be like? And I want you to go ahead, associate into the feeling, create a name for it, for what that would feel like if you had these missing parts in your life experience now. You were able to do these things, you were able to say these things, you were able to be all of this now. What would that being feel like, and what would you name it? And I want you to go ahead, name it and claim it, right? Because these are the parts that potentially have been, not available to you because they weren't available in the role that was in the crust. But thinking about if you brought these in, and how are these going to help you achieve your goals now? How are these going to help you build your business now? And I want you to think about that. Go ahead, name it and claim it. And so go ahead and do that after the session. Take your time with it. I don't want you to rush this. I want you to, have a think about, the list, and take your time. So once you've felt like you've completed that, right, and it's full and it's complete, then we can move on to the next part, which is to do some self-reflection, which is, now that we've named what we've been doing in our crust version of ourselves, we want to ask ourselves a couple of questions here, like, what will happen if I stay this way? Like, how will it affect your external world, everything in your external world, which is your relationships, your career, business, health, wealth, family? What happens if I continue living from this crust version for another 12 weeks, for another 6 months, or even 2 years? What's that going to be like? What's that going to feel like? What are the effects of it? And how will I feel if this is my reality and I keep living from this crust version? What is that going to be like for me? So I want you to go ahead, again, associate into each question. Take the time to answer these. Do not rush them. Really feel into them, okay? And then after that, we're going to have a look at, okay, now with the missing parts that have been missing, right? Considering what life is going to be like when those are around and integrated into your world, and also what it's going to be like when you resign from just doing the crust stuff. When you resign from the role, what will it be like? What evidence are you going to see to know that you've resigned from just doing the crust version of yourself? What will you be able to achieve differently with the parts that have been missing that you're now using in your life? How will that affect your external world, your relationships, career, business, etc.? And what would spending the next 12 weeks, 6 months, or even 2 years be like living this way with the pieces that you're now, using and expressing in your life? And ultimately, why do you want this? What is your highest purpose of living this way? So I want you to go ahead and associate into those questions and note those down too in your own time, and most importantly, to take your time. And the last question here is, what do you now need to let go of in order to create this change? So you can see the crust, you can see the parts that are missing. What do you need to let go of in order to create the change that you feel is going to move you towards building your business, achieving your goals, and creating the life that you're wanting to live on the outside? So feel into that and list down all the things that you may need to let go of in order to, to create the changes you want. Now, that's the self-reflection part, right? Which is very powerful, and I really do urge you to take your time. The next part we're going to look at is doing some self-reflection ceremonies. So we're actually going to do a little bit more than just writing it down, right? And just writing out what this is about. We've done the understanding part, so we're understanding what the crust has been like and what's been missing. Now we're going to start to do some ceremonies that are going to begin the resignation of some of these roles. And this is where we begin to massage the subconscious, right? So I want you to, once you've named the crust part of your being, the being that has been in place for all these years, I want you to write a resignation letter. So starting with, I resign from the role of whatever you have named your role, right? The role that's been playing out in the crust version of you. I resign from the role of blah, right? And be as ceremonial as you need to. Send it to yourself in the mail if you need to. Place your letter in an envelope and just and lick it, and then, you know, let it dry for half an hour, come back, open it, and read it from the eyes of your new version of self. Okay, do what you need to do. Maybe just writing it is enough for you. Whatever it is perfect for you. So that's the ceremony number one. Ceremony number two is to go ahead and take 2 sheets of paper. On one, call it right up the top, your name, and then 1.0. So this is, you know, the version of you that you have been, and write down everything that you have been. So in more detail, okay, who you have been, who you've had to be. Now on the second piece of paper, call it and write at the top your name 2.0, okay, and then write down who you're now becoming as a result of integrating back in these pieces that have, you know, been underneath the crust, haven't been exposed, haven't been shown. Who are you now becoming as a result of having these resources that have been misplaced for so long? So that's ceremony number two. And then once you have written down those versions, I want you to then write down a thank you note to the old version of you for getting you here. Thanking them, loving them, and just showing appreciation, because here's the thing with roles is that they were put in place. There was a crust version of you that was put in place to protect you, right? Because if it wasn't there, then you would have just done all the stuff that wasn't accepted over and over and over and over again, right? And that could have got you in trouble, or that on a deeper level, right, felt like you were going against what the tribe is saying they wanted. And if you're always going against, then there was a fear that you could be cut off or not taken care of by the tribe. So I really want you to hear that it is so important that these roles were in place, because if they weren't, it may have meant that you felt like you couldn't survive. So I want you to write down that thank you note to the old version of you for the role, right, that you've been playing for getting you here, because their main job and the only reason why the role existed was because it loved you and it wanted to protect you. And what we're going to do here is we want to love them and thank that role for doing all they have done. And now it's time to let them go. You're acknowledging that they have served you until now, that this role, this version of you has served you up until now. But now with the goals and the dreams that you have, right, and the person who you need to become, it's now time for you to own your kingdom, your queendom, right? It's now time for you to go ahead and start driving on the driver's seat of your bus, of your Ferrari, of your Lamborghini, right? Or in my case, you know, a Dodge. It's now time to be in the driver's seat. And for that reason, it's time to have them sit in the passenger seat. So these are the ceremonies that I'll get you to complete, to really associate into and take the time to do. Once you have completed all of these, right? Once you've completed all of these, then the next step is to jump into the calendar and to select a time to do the integration, the one-on-one integration work with me. And this is going to be a session where we go ahead and we, based off of the work that you have done here from this pre-learning, it's so important that you do it. We go ahead and we integrate the new version of you, right? We explore further the roles that you have been playing. It's going to be so much fun. I'm looking forward to it. I won't spoil it too much for you. All you want to do right now is take care of going through the self-reflection exercises and the self-ceremony exercises. And once you're ready to book in, whether it be a week, whether it be a week and a half, it does not matter. Take the time to associate into it. There's no, whatever's right for you. If you need, check in with me, send me a text message. If you're feeling stuck or you just need to, language something out in a text message, go ahead and do that. And then when you're ready, let's book in for our one-on-one integration session. So remember, guys, that there is no right or wrong in doing these exercises. There's not one shoe that fits all. Everybody's life experience has been completely different, okay? There's no two people that have, experienced the same things. And so whatever's coming up and being jotted down on your piece of paper is absolutely what it's supposed to be. And on a final note is just to remember to bring compassion and love towards all of this work that you're doing, and whilst you're exploring. And if there's anything that you need a hand with, or you need to talk about, to keep you on track, I'm only a message away. So with that, guys, I will leave it there, and I look forward to seeing you on our one-on-one integration session. Thank you. Chat soon.